They chuckled at her plain gray sweater and unassuming demeanor. The affluent women at Evelyn's elegant dinner party mocked her relentlessly. What they didn't realize was that this modest redhead with a simple bun had just sold her furniture company for $750 million. Their expressions upon discovering the truth were priceless. Margaret Lawson tugged self-consciously at the sleeve of her gray cashmere sweater as she stood at the threshold of Evelyn's magnificent home. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the immaculate entryway. Fresh white roses adorned marble tables, their subtle fragrance mingling with the scent of expensive perfume. This was a world away from Margaret's modest townhouse. "I should have worn something different," she murmured to herself, smoothing down her simple black skirt. At 45, Margaret had never been one for luxury fashion despite her means. She preferred comfort over couture, substance over style. A uniformed server approached with a silver tray of champagne flutes. Margaret took one with a grateful smile. She hadn't seen Evelyn since college, over 20 years ago, but they had reconnected online recently. Evelyn had insisted Margaret attend her dinner party, saying she was dying to catch up. "Evelyn will be down shortly," the server informed her. "The other guests are in the dining room." Margaret nodded and made her way toward the soft chatter and tinkling laughter. As she entered the opulent dining room, conversation momentarily ceased. 6 women in designer clothing sat around a table glittering with fine china and crystal. Each wore enviable jewelry and perfectly styled hair. Their eyes, sharpened by years of social competition, took in Margaret's simple appearance with immediate judgment. "You must be Evelyn's friend." A blonde woman with a pearl necklace broke the silence. Her voice was honeyed, but her eyes were cold. "Yes, I'm Margaret Lawson. Evelyn and I were roommates in college." "How charming," another woman replied, her voice suggesting it was anything but. "I'm Veronica. Please, join us." Margaret took the empty seat, setting her small handbag beside her plate. She felt rather than saw the discreet exchange of glances around the table. "Evelyn mentioned you're in furniture," Veronica said, the final word delivered like a curious specimen to be examined. "Yes, that's right," Margaret answered simply. She never elaborated on her success unless necessary. Years of experience had taught her that people's reactions to wealth said more about them than any resume could reveal. "That must be interesting," offered a woman with an impressive diamond bracelet. "I'm Diane, by the way. My husband's in real estate development. He just closed a $40 million deal on the East Side," added Veronica with the rehearsed casualness of someone accustomed to dropping figures into conversation. Margaret smiled politely. "That sounds impressive." The women launched into a discussion of their husbands' business ventures and their own charity boards, designer purchases, and upcoming vacations. Margaret listened, occasionally sipping her champagne. "And what about you, Margaret?" Veronica finally asked. "What brings you back to town?" "Furniture shopping." She laughed delicately at her own joke, the others joining in. "Actually, I'm here for a few meetings," Margaret replied honestly. What she didn't add was that those meetings were with her investment team about diversifying the enormous windfall from selling her company 6 months ago. "Oh, meetings? How exciting," drawled Diane, exchanging amused glances with Veronica. Margaret observed them calmly. She'd encountered this before the immediate dismissal based on appearances. Once, it would have bothered her, but she'd long since learned that true worth wasn't measured in designer labels or status symbols. "Where is Evelyn?" someone asked. "It's not like her to be late to her own dinner party." "She texted that she's running behind," Diane said. "Something about a delivery issue with the flowers." Margaret inwardly sighed. Without Evelyn as a buffer, the evening stretched before her like a social minefield. Little did she know, the real ordeal was just beginning. "So, Margaret," Veronica leaned forward slightly, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Tell us more about this furniture business of yours. Do you have a little shop somewhere?" The dismissive tone wasn't lost on Margaret. She'd faced it countless times during her 20-year journey from garage workshop to industry leader. "I design custom pieces," Margaret answered simply. She could have mentioned her company's international presence or the celebrity clients who commissioned her work, but years of being underestimated had taught her the value of humility. "How quaint," Veronica replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think my housekeeper's daughter does something similar." "Crafts, right?" Laughter rippled around the table, except for Margaret, who simply smiled politely. I imagine it must be difficult, Diane interjected, her voice dripping with insincere sympathy. Such a competitive market. My husband always says retail is a brutal business. Margaret took a sip of her champagne. It has its challenges. But surely it's just a hobby, pressed Veronica. Something to keep you busy. Another woman, who'd introduced herself as Bethany, glanced at Margaret's unadorned hands. No wedding ring. Never found time for family between all the furniture making. Margaret set her glass down carefully. I chose to focus on my business. Veronica shared a look with Diane. Well, we all make our choices. Some of us are just fortunate enough to have options. She adjusted her pearl necklace with manicured fingers. A server appeared, placing elaborately plated appetizers before each guest. Margaret noticed how Veronica's eyes narrowed slightly when she thanked the server by name. These look lovely, Margaret commented, admiring the artistic arrangement. Evelyn employs the most sought-after private chef in the city, Bethany said. Impossible to book unless you know someone. The restaurant he opened last year has already earned a Michelin star, added Veronica, studying Margaret for a reaction. Margaret nodded appreciatively. The food looks wonderful. Margaret, I'm curious, Diane said, delicately spearing a scallop with her fork. What brought you into furniture? It seems such an unusual choice. Before Margaret could answer, Veronica chimed in. Perhaps it's a family business. Something passed down. The implication was clear. They couldn't imagine someone choosing such a profession without inheritance or necessity. Actually, I started from scratch, Margaret explained. I studied design in college and always had a passion for creating functional art. Functional art, Veronica repeated, as if tasting something sour. How interesting. She means furniture that's both beautiful and practical. Another woman, Margaret, translated unnecessarily. Yes, I gathered that. Thank you, Margaret, Veronica replied with a tight smile. Margaret observed the subtle power dynamics at play. Veronica was clearly the alpha of this social circle, with the others falling into familiar patterns around her. It was remarkably similar to corporate board meetings she'd attended, just with more expensive jewelry. Your sweater is quite comfortable looking, Bethany observed, her gaze